You guys asked and asked and asked. It is finally here. Hey you guys, what's up and welcome to the Prime Vanguard channel. My name is Cassius and I'm the host and creator of the Prime Vanguard channel. And today I will be featuring to you my Knight of Fury Agravain deck profile. This is a deck profile that I have non-stop been seeing in the comments throughout my videos. I've gotten a few messages about it from Instagram and a few discussions I've been on Facebook about people just wanting to see my iteration of Knight of Fury Agravain for the March 2021 meta. This is a deck that has been featured on my channel so many times, so I think people get the idea that at this point I'm a big Agravain fan. I like Agravain over Spectral, I liked it over Ezel. I'm on the same par with Gorbuduc, but that's because I played Gorbuduc like all the way back when Gorbuduc was in G, so I think they're all really cool. This variation of Agravain though is one that has been really hard for me to do because I felt like in my last video of Agravain, I thought that like I kind of just have this deck figured out. Any changes I made to it wouldn't be as major or as big as I did for this one, but for this one, there have been some pretty big changes. There's been a reduction. There's been pretty big changes, and I'm ready to show you guys them. I've been working really hard on this, and I think it's about time that I show you guys the true power of Agravain, in my opinion, and just some new knowledge that I've learned about the deck as I've been playing it. So I'm very happy to showcase this deck to you guys and finally just calm down all the hype. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I now introduce to you my deck profile for Knights of Fury Agravain March 2021. Let's get started. Alright you guys, so to get started off with this deck profile, I'm going to play 4 copies of Knights of Fury Agravain. Knights of Fury Agravain, in case you guys haven't noticed, is already one of my favorite Gold Paladin units, still one of the strongest Gold Paladin units I personally believe to be in the game. His ability to generate extra soul, resource, and multi-attacks with very little is amazing to do. It gives you a great first turn grade 3 rush, and then gives you a great later game rush, and then you can build up to your Soul Blast 12 strategy if you wanted to for a deck that needs to play into later game, which makes it very devastating for your opponent to deal with later. For my next grade 3, I play 4 copies of Bluish Flame Liberator Percival. Now, as everyone knows, Bluish Flame Liberator Percival is probably one of the best supporting grade 3 Gold Paladin cards in standard to exist. His ability to generate you an extra unit and the ability to give you an additional XL marker makes any Gold Paladin deck you play a lot more aggressive. To generate more power, board, and offensive pressure against our opponent, it's very important that we do play 4 copies of this to maximize the chances of seeing additional XL markers. And since I am playing Percival, I'm just going to go ahead and showcase one major change that I did make to the deck. But I'm also now only playing 1 copy of Oath Liberator Aglovale. I did watch the video of another YouTuber called Strictly Broken TCG, I think that's his name. I'm so sorry I forgot your name wrong, but he came up with this deck list on his Spectral Duke Dragon video, and in this video he goes on and explains his theory behind playing 1 Aglovale and 4 Percival. Now, I was one of the people that was skeptical about this, but after trying it myself, it really does work, and it did make a lot of sense for me personally. In my previous deck profile of Agravain, I was only playing 2 copies of Aglovale anyway, so dropping this down to 1 didn't really faze me that much, as since I'm playing 4 copies of Percival and maxing out the chances of seeing Aglovale through the deck of the drop zone, I'm always going to see this card, and I only need to see 1 of this anyway. It's a grade 2 unit that gives additional 10,000 power, more soul, and then bounces itself back to hand. So it's very useful in a deck like this where I can bounce back to hand, and if I have it in my hand again for next turn, I can combine that with my Agravain, and then I increase the number of calls that I made for the turn, so I can increase the number of superior calls that I made for Agravain to look at my deck more and check out more units to join the field. And the fact that it puts itself back into hand means that I still kept the number of calls I made and I got a card back. So it really is a +1 to the entire deck, but I just felt like only 2 or 1 was necessary because there still are a bunch of other supporting grade 2s and grade 1s in the deck that Agravain needs to have in order for him to have a successful game strategy. Therefore, I found myself dropping this card to 1. I do not personally regret my decision. I understand that there's some Agravain players that might play this card, either they max it out or they play 2 or whatever ratio they feel like, depending on the strategy that they wanted. I believe that if I was going for the Soul Blast 12 strategy, then maybe 4 copies of this card might be necessary, as it is a card that you can continuously use to pump soul into the deck, which means you can get to the Agravain 12 Soul Blast strategy faster. But this deck is more focused on offensive pressure through numbers and just mass swarming, and that's how we build up our resources and play our offense out. And that's why I've dropped this card down to 1. I do not regret my decision on this, but if you want to play more than one Aglovale, that's completely up to you. No judgments here. For my next grade 3, I play 3 copies of Full Cavalier Dragon. Full Cavalier Dragon is another great supporting grade 3 for Agravain and just Gold Paladin in general. If you guys do not know what this card does, he has the following ability, which is on the Act, Vanguard, or Rearguard circle, you may Soul Blast 1, Superior Call the top card of your deck, and give your Vanguard 5,000 power. Now this 5,000 power is the main reason why I've decided to bump this card up to 3, and the Superior Call is also helpful as well. The fact that this is an act ability means that if I Superior Call it during the battle phase of the turn prior that was on Agravain, now I have another unit that will give me another card for free. Not only does it boost my calls, but it also boosts Agravain's power, meaning that Agravain's attack, if you're playing against the Force matchup, is not relevant because that's one more attack they have to consider against guarding against. For my last grade 3, I am playing 2 copies of Knight of Flying Rings Edmund. I really do love Knight of Flying Rings Edmund. I actually think it's one of the best rare grade 3s to support Gold Paladin, especially in a deck like this. It offers so much offensive pressure, and then it does the exact same thing as my Aglovale. It does the exact same thing as him, where you move a card from your field to the soul, give this unit 10,000 power, and then bounce it back to hand. But if your Vanguard's grade 3, he becomes a 10k shield. Now in our deck, because the amount of grade 3s that we play, since we need to play that amount to have the most offensive turn that we can, we don't actually have that much space for grade 1s in the deck. So playing a card that makes up for the lack of grade 1s that we play and the extra shield value is actually very helpful. And the fact that this unit moves the unit into the soul and bounces it back into the hand is the same reason that I had stated for my Aglovale, is that I can use it for next turn, increase my calls, and then get some defense out of it. And build up my hand while I'm doing so that I have cards to play around with for next turn. Edmund is just one of the best offensive grade 3 units that I do have in this deck, so I wanted to make sure that I kept 2 of him, because in my last deck profile I did play 2 of him as well, but I just feel like 2 is a solid number in this deck. I hated playing 1. I just think that 2 for me is the best way to go. I played 4 copies of Liberator of the Flute Escrad. Since this is an Agravain deck, Escrad is essentially our free +1. Whenever he's placed in the Vanguard or Rearguard circle, we get a free Superior Call. So this card, whenever you see it, always means going to be 2 calls, which means you get to look at the top 2 of your deck, and that's just going through your deck a lot faster. The power bonus is actually a little bit more relevant now, simply because, or helpful, since we are playing Excel 1 in this deck as our main marker, meaning that he does become good numbers and we don't have to worry about damage trigger slowing us down. For my next grade 2, I play 3 copies of Knight of Springlight Perimore. Now in this version of Agravain, since I no longer play Sagramore, I now play Perimore. Essentially, with Perimore being able to give me a call from the hand to activate any of my on-place hand card abilities that are in my hand, such as my Dindrane or any of my other units, and then being able to draw a card helps me get back some more of my resources. His ability to get 5k power with Superior Call as well also makes him a great offensive unit when we're going on our offensive turns, but the fact that he's an act means that it's the same thing for my Cavalier Dragon. I can go into next turn knowing that I already have a unit on board that will give me a plus, and I don't have to use my hand to really do so, as I draw a card to make up for the card I just placed on the board. For my next grade 2, I play 2 copies of Knight of Hard Work Allenor. Knight of Hard Work Allenor has pretty much held its place in the deck since my very first deck profile in Agravain. I think I said this card was always going to be a staple in Agravain, and I pretty much was not wrong about that. This card is your big beat stick of the deck. He becomes 24k with ease, and then because you are Excel 1 most of the time, you're going to be playing him at 34k and then add front triggers. He essentially becomes a very high power unit very fast, which means that on your board you have more strong and high powered units than you did prior, therefore your attacks actually matter against your opponent more when they have to guard against them. Now we're going to go on to my grade 1s. For my first grade 1s, I play 2 copies of Little Battler Tron. I playing 2 copies of Tron realistically because this card gives you some sort of early game push when you ride it, and then because it's a grade 1 unit that gains extra power and then has an on-hit ability, there's the pressure coming from that as well. As on the turn with Agravain and you need to make more calls, you have Tron you can play and then put on Excel 1 and then give him 5k power, and then you'd be up to 23k attacker that might superior call you 1. And whether that 1 is a good card or whether that 1 is just another call for Agravain, it's still scary for your opponent to think about and what they have to consider depending on what you've already played that they can see on the board for them to come to whatever conclusion that they think your probability of calling will be. But I'm playing Tron simply because I like the offensive pressure it gives, I like the element of surprise, and the fact that it's a free superior call and applies more pressure helps this deck out a lot. So 2 Trons is my personal tech choice for Agravain. For my next grade 1, I play 4 copies of Listener of Truth Dindrane. Listener of Truth Dindrane is the best supporting Gold Paladin resource management card. You call her out, you get a counter charge, or you get to draw 1, and she'll always hold 4 slots in this deck, as resource management, like I said earlier, is a key piece to having a successful Vanguard strategy. For my last grade 1, I play 4 copies of Dawning Night Gorbuduc. In a serious game, you want to see Agravain. You need to see Agravain. You want to be able to re-ride Agravain. You want to be able to have Agravain on your first grade 3 turn so that your first grade 3 attack is actually relevant. Like, you need to see Agravain. It's your main grade 3 for the deck. You want to be able to draw into that card. And Gorbuduc, the fact that it gets an easy power bonus and the fact that it lets you look out for your grade 3 just made it a staple in the deck right away. Alright, so moving on to my triggers, I play 4 copies of Knights of Forceful Fight Nalnes. I play 4 copies of Dantegal. I play 4 copies of Halo Shield Mark. Finally, for my last trigger, I play 4 copies of Elixir Sommelier. And then my starter for the deck is Crimson Lion Cub Kryph. Alright you guys, we are now at the point that I like to talk about what marker I believe is best for the deck to play. And as I've been stating throughout this entire video, I really think that Excel 1 is the route to go. In this deck you already have the extra superior calling, you have the resource management, you have the power now, you just need that extra push to make sure that your attacks are doing what they're supposed to. And Excel 2, yes, it gives you a small amount of power and resource, and I think that in games against Blue, and I think that in game, yes, Excel 2 will give you power and resources, but against force decks and against decks that already build up a lot of hand and can manage their resources very well, having Excel 1 give you that extra push and break through their defenses on top of all the front triggers that you play, in my opinion, is a lot more threatening than having Excel 2 and just getting an extra +1 card draw. And to me, that 1 card draw isn't relevant, especially in a deck like this, when you're just trying to go all out on your offense and explode on grade 3. Because unfortunately, one of a Knight of Fury Agravain's weaknesses is that this deck cannot play an early game rush simply because you need to be able to have Agravain on the board and make as many calls as you want while on Agravain. So if I were to fill up my board prior to being on Agravain, unless I called over units which would just minus me, I have to wait until I get onto Agravain and make those calls. So on your first ride of Agravain, that's when you can explode. And then when you do explode on Agravain, you actually get a lot of damage, you get a lot of resources back, and you, on a good game, which is most games, you just have everything you need to keep you going. And the fact that this deck uses the deck for its main resource for everything means that there is a lot of deck manipulation going on. So if you're somebody who, you know, pays attention to his triggers and his cards, and you know the ratios of the cards you play in the deck, then you should do just fine. But what does all that have to do with Excel 1? It essentially means that Excel 1 makes all of our attacks relevant and that we don't get really stopped by defensive triggers, as that was one of all Agravain's main weaknesses, and just any Excel deck in general, which is power. So Excel 1 just fixed that issue, and the fact that we have all these resource management cards and cards that give us extra Excel, and you've got Dindrane and you've got Agravain, and I mean, we got Aglovale and Edmund. Excel 1 is just the route that I'm going, and I've been enjoying ever since, and that's just how this deck's been able to keep up. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and come out and say it. In my personal opinion, just because of my experience, the way that I played this deck, and from what I've been learning, I think this deck, at least the variation that I'm playing, I think that Agravain is on the same level as Spectral Duke Dragon. I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't want to say that it's better than Spectral Duke Dragon because I do not believe so, but at the same time, I think that if a good Agravain player and a good Spectral Duke player were to meet up and play, so aka me, and somebody else were to play, I think that it would be a good game, and there would have to be, it would not just be, oh, Spectral Duke overpowers you. So Agravain, he still can fight, still keep up with the meta, he still got a lot of surprises and a lot more things that we can do with him, and there are other good viable variants of this deck that are a little bit more on edge and risky, and I don't like to gamble like that, so this variation of the deck is the one that I'm comfortable with. Alright you guys, well thank you so much for watching and checking out today's deck profile. This is one that you guys have been asking for a lot. I've been seeing so many comments just asking me for when's Agravain coming out, when's your next iteration of Agravain coming out, please drop Agravain. And this is it. This is what I've got for the March 2021 meta for Knights of Fury Agravain. If you guys did enjoy this deck profile, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help the channel. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel as well and hit the notification bell so you guys can see all the interesting deck profiles that I have coming out. And a few talking videos. I've been noticing a lot of stuff with Overdress, and I think it's about time that I give just my personal opinion on what's going on. So check out a few more of my discussion videos that'll be coming out as well. Don't forget to comment on this video, tell me what you think about my Knight of Fury Agravain deck, and if your friends think about building Agravain and just want something to go off of, do not forget to share this video with them and let them check it out. Again, all of my decks are just templates and built off my experience and my personal feelings and thoughts about cards, but they're not set in stone. All right, you guys, peace.